Hello, and welcome to Emerging Forum. I'm Christy Ashwanden.
And I'm Rosemary Watola Tromer, and this is a show on creative process. Hi, Christy.
Hello, Rosemary.
So, we're going to talk about rituals, daily habits, things like that today. But before we introduce our guest, uh, I want to talk about one that you and I have in common.
We
And that
do, yeah.
is that, and it's one of the first things I knew about you, Christy, is that you are also a night writer.
I am. I am. You know, I I have to say I get so frustrated. Yeah, it's almost universal, this advice that people are given, like, just get up an hour earlier, and do your writing. And I'm like, screw that. I want to sleep in the morning. I'd rather stay up an hour later, to do the writing. And to be honest, it's just the time of the day when I'm most productive. I'm so much more productive writing at 11 o'clock or midnight than I am at, 5 a.m. Forget it.
Well, so I have to tell you, that has always been the story for me also. And
Hmm.
I'm not going to become a morning writer. Seems abundantly clear. And I have tried it and I gave it a fair shake for like 6 months. But I think
A
what I
whole
have
6 months.
noticed, if that's a long time. That's a long
That's a
time.
long time. Yeah, I wouldn't have made it that long. 6 days, maybe.
But I think, Christy, what I am noticing is that I can't stay up as late. Like, I used to be not just a night writer, but like a 2
Mm,
AM writer, and
yeah.
now I notice that it's more like a 9 AM writer, a 9 rather, a 9 PM
Mhm.
writer, right? A 9 PM writer,
Yeah.
a 10 PM writer. It's not the wee hours of the morning, it's more like the later hours of night. I think
That's
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 just getting
happened to
old.
me as well, and I think it is. I still like to write at night, but now I'm usually trying to go to bed at about 11:30. If I stay up the other thing I've noticed is if I stay up right around midnight, I tend to get the second wind. I'll start to get a little tired, but if I'm still working on something, all of a sudden I'll get the second wind, and then
Yeah.
next thing I know, it's 2 AM, and that's just not very compatible with the rest of my life.
Right, 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 and it didn't used to hurt as much as it does now, it
Yeah,
used to be like,
yeah.
"Oh, sure, that's fine," and I've come to value sleep a lot more.
Oh, yeah, sleep is very important to me. Yeah. Well, tell us about our guest today.
I'm so excited to bring on Mason Currey. Mason is the author of the Daily Rituals books, featuring brief profiles of the day-to-day working lives of more than 300 brilliant minds. His latest book, Making Art and Making a Living, was published just recently, March 31st, 2026. Curry lives in Los Angeles and writes Subtle Maneuvers, a twice monthly newsletter on the creative process.
All
Let's bring him
right.
on.
Hi, Mason. Welcome to Emerging Forum.
Hey, so happy to be here. Thank you for having me
Mason,
on.
we're so happy to have you join us. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
So, you've written numerous books about daily rituals of well known creatives. Uh, what is the genesis of this interest in this work, this body of work you have?
I mean, it really comes out of my own confusion about how to be a writer. As a young
Mhm,
person, I thought, okay, I think I want to be a writer, in quotes. I didn't really know exactly what kind of writer or how to go about it. And I
mhm,
sort of found that I wasn't writing. I had this ambition, but I wasn't really doing it. And I felt like, geez, why can't I do this thing that I supposedly want to do? And I just was hungry for any stories about how people did do it, writers or artists, other creative people. How did they
mhm,
make the time for this work? How did they make themselves do it when they didn't feel like it? Was there
mhm.
something I was missing? Or, could I sort of like borrow the right routine or the right habit that would suddenly make me able to do this thing that was important to me, but I wasn't doing? So that's kind of the genesis of it all.
That's so interesting, and I think it really goes into I think it's so common to have this feeling or this notion of, like, if I just figure out the right trick or
Right.
there's some secret magic way, if I just figure that out, I can be a real writer, and, like, the real secret is button chair, like, fingers on
Yeah.
keyboard, whatever, but we're always looking for some sort of thing that's gonna help us along.
Yeah, it's like there really is no magic trick, spoiler, but,
Yeah.
I do think that thinking about it, trying different things,
Mhm.
the trial and error of it has had value for me. And you never know, in my experience, when you might find something that does sort of enable you or unlock something, or it at least keeps your butt in the chair. You know what I mean? It doesn't make you
Yeah.
suddenly a magical genius, but these little tricks, these little sort of like attitude shifts can, for me at least, add up to like a some kind of method, something to fall back on, you know?
Is there one in particular that you've adopted that's been particularly useful?
I mean, for me, I've always written best first thing in the morning, like early in the
Mm,
morning, right
mhm.
after I've woken up. The earlier, the better. And like as a young person, I didn't quite want to face up to that fact. You know, I didn't want to get up really
Uh-huh.
early.
Yeah.
I found that hard to do. I would snooze my alarm. And it's just been a process of sort of coming to terms with like that really is my window of opportunity each day. And I have to
Mhm.
actually seize it. So when I got the opportunity to do the first Daily Rituals book, I was also working a full time job, and the only way to do it was to get up early in the
Mhm.
morning.
Mm.
So I would get up at 5:30 and put in a couple hours on the book before going to work, and I've really just stuck with that habit ever since. Like I still get up at 5:30 every morning today, even though I have a much more flexible schedule, because that's just sort of like my window of opportunity, and I'm trying to use it.
There is something about sort of making it slotted into your calendar, right? Like this is, this time is reserved for this and this only.
Mhm.
Yeah, and there's a great power to repetition, I think. There's a
Mhm.
wonderful quote in the book from the Japanese novelist Haruki Murakami talking about how when he's writing a novel, he gets up really early and he says the important thing is the repetition, that like by
Mhm.
repeating the same routine day after day, he can almost like mesmerize himself to get into this deeper state of mind. I think that's a real theme in these profiles, is that this kind of work is sort of slippery and elusive. It's not like you can walk the dog and answer some emails and then all of a sudden just switch on a dime and start writing the great American novel. You sort of have to like walk yourself into this headspace, or a lot of people
Mhm.
have found that to be true. You need to do something to sort of transition into a little bit of an alternate reality or an alternate mindset where you can do this sort of funny, difficult, special work.
Uh-huh.
Which is really different from, I think a lot of people have this idea about writing that you just sit down and write when you're inspired to write, as
Yeah.
opposed to you dedicate this time and you have this space. And even if you don't know what's going to happen, you still have the space for it. I'm curious, do you,
Yeah.
even when you don't have a project that you're specifically working on, I mean, that may not ever happen. Maybe you always have projects because I know you have blogs and books and all these things, but do you ever sit down to write without having something specific to write?
I do quite often, yeah. And I
Mm,
mean, sometimes I'll sit down and use that time to read, or use that time to write in my journal,
mhm.
or sometimes I'll just look out the window. But I try to create that,
Oh.
that space, where I'm not going to
Mhm.
be interrupted. I think that's one of the reasons the early morning is really effective, because nobody really expects you to be available, and that's kind of my time to try to be in the general vicinity of a creative project, even if I don't always know what it is, or even if I'm not necessarily. I mean, sometimes I might like organize my files or my computer desktop, and
Right.
but like I'm sort of thinking about it. I'm trying to
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to make that time be somehow like separate from everything else, if that makes sense.
Totally,
Sure.
and, I
Yeah.
think, Mason, part of what you're saying too, that I know is also true for me, is that so much of writing isn't writing. So much of
Mhm.
writing is looking out the window, so much of writing is reading and organizing and
Yeah. I think so much of any creative act is the sort of tension between making it happen and
Mhm.
not making it happen. Like you have to get your butt in the chair or get
Yeah.
into the studio. You have to really like make a real effort. It's not going to
Mhm.
magically happen, and you have to show up, and often you have to show up over and over and over again. At the same time, there's a way in which you can't force it. You have to
Yeah.
like create the conditions and trust
Mhm.
something's going to happen. And then like you say, you might actually spend that time doodling or looking out the window or watering the houseplants, and you have to sort of trust that something is building up.
Yeah.
So I always find that fascinating.
Yeah, it really can't be forced, can it? But at the same time, you're sort of creating the environment for which it's going to happen. You have to
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think circling back to the thing about inspiration, I think it's like people have it backwards. They think you should wait until you feel inspired and then you
Right.
do the thing, but it's actually more like by doing the thing, you arrive at these patches of inspiration.
Absolutely, yeah. That's definitely been my experience as well. I was really curious to know if you could tell us a little bit about the name of your newsletter, Subtle Maneuvers. I love this, and I would just love to hear that story from you.
Oh, sure. Yeah, when I was researching this first book, I was reading about the writer Franz Kafka, who sort of
Mhm.
famously had this day job that he hated in an insurance office, and he lived at home with his parents. And um, he was just like a very sort of almost comically tortured writer figure. And there's this letter he wrote to his fiance at the time saying, complaining about the situation, saying, I have no time. My strength is limited. The apartment is noisy. The only time I can write is late at night. And he says, there's this line he says, and if a pleasant, straightforward life is not possible, then one must try to wriggle through by subtle maneuvers. And I thought, like,
That's
what a
it,
great,
yeah.
I thought that's it. Like, of course, what else
Yeah,
can you do? I mean, so often we
yeah,
can't really do a lot about the big picture conditions of our
yeah.
life. We can't attain this like
Mhm.
perfect dream writer or artist life, but we can wriggle through by subtle maneuvers. So to me, the subtle maneuvers are the small shifts in your habits or your
Mhm.
attitudes that you might adopt that might help you just keep moving forward.
What are a couple of your subtle maneuvers?
I mean, getting up early is the big one.
Mhm.
I did get into the habit when I was working on the first book. I had like a sort of drafty apartment in Brooklyn, and it
Uh-huh.
was cold in there. And I would wear this hooded sweatshirt, and then I would put the hood up, and I found that like it was almost like having blinders on. Like I would sort of be in this
Interesting.
zone where it was like just the light from my laptop, and I've sort of ever since. It's a little embarrassing, but I feel like if I have something it's like like I have sort of like a lucky scarf. I'm not
Uh-huh.
gonna put it on camera, but like it's like a bit of a security blanket. I mean,
Uh-huh.
and that actually is a big theme in the book. A lot of people's rituals are a way of like soothing themselves when they do this
Yeah,
work that actually can feel very vulnerable. I mean, you often feel
absolutely.
like sort of an idiot when you're trying to do this thing. You think, here I am, I'm supposed to be this writer, and it's like the first draft is often so bad, and you think, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. And I mean, one of my favorite stories is about Patricia Highsmith, the novelist.
Uh-huh.
She liked to work by sitting on her bed with like a mug of coffee and a donut and a pack of cigarettes, and like she had this whole like she was kind of surrounded herself with all these soothing objects and items,
Uh-huh.
and it was only she called it like a womb of her own, like only by sort
Oh,
of
I
getting
love
into
it.
this
Uh-huh.
incredibly
Yeah.
comfortable space could she do this work. So that's my miniature version.
Yeah,
That's
and I think there's a lot of writers that, will talk about getting dressed for work, or getting dressed to go, something about, how you're presenting yourself in the world can be helpful too.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of that in the books as well. People
Mhm.
put on their sort of business outfit, and even there's a great story about a novelist who worked from home but would like get dressed, go out the door, walk around the block, and then come back in and sit down to work as if he were going to an office, because it's again about sort of like shifting mental states,
Mhm.
finding a way to shift into this other mode.
I have to admit, I sort of do that. I don't do the clothes thing, but, for me, one of the most important daily rituals is just walking the dog, and if I don't do it, I don't feel like my whole day feels off, but there is something about I walk the dog, and then I come to my office, and I start working, and it's like, that's sort of, the sign that, "Okay, now it's time to work."
Yeah, I think that's really common and like really important. And walking in
Mhm.
particular is one of the huge themes in
Oh,
this
yeah.
material. Like, how many people really, I mean, I forget to do it, I mean, but like the great composers and writers of all time, that was a big, big part of how they did their work was going on a walk, having some paper in
Mhm.
their pocket if they had an idea.
every single guest, I think, without fail, every guest on Emerging Form has brought up walking or running. I think
Yeah,
or
Yeah.
swimming, one
I've
person
always,
was
yeah,
Like, yeah.
I've always
Some
aspired
kind
to
of
be
exercise.
a runner,
Yeah.
but haven't gotten there yet.
That's all right. I wondered, can you tell us there are so many fascinating anecdotes in all of your books, but what are some of the most interesting or unexpected creative habits that you've encountered?
There are so many. I mean, I think the most bizarre one I ran across was this 18th century German playwright and philosopher named Friedrich Schiller, who supposedly liked to keep a drawer full of rotting apples in his workroom because he needed the decaying smell to feel the urge to write. That's one of those ones where it's maybe apocryphal. It's sort of like the lore around him, but
That is
at the
so
same
weird,
time, I
yeah.
can sort of see like how this olfactory cue can be part of like being
Mhm.
in this writing
Sure.
space. That's my favorite weird one. There are lots
That
of
is
Uh-huh.
others.
really
I mean,
weird.
supposedly Beethoven would count out a precise number of coffee beans to make his morning coffee. Igor Stravinsky, the composer, would execute a headstand when he felt blocked to like clear his head. There's a million
Ooh,
things like that.
I might have to try that one.
A lot of people couldn't bear to have anyone hear or see them like when they were working. So there's a lot
Mhm,
of rituals around privacy and solitude.
mhm,
There's a
mhm.
story about Faulkner would take the door handle off the door to his office so nobody could come in. I always love
That's
that.
fantastic, yeah.
That's really funny. That's really funny. So I was thinking in your most recent book, which actually we haven't started talking about yet, so I'm going to table this question. Beep 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 beep. Um, let's talk first about your latest book, Making Art, Making a Living. Um, you're delving into the question of how do people in the creative arts balance their need to make art and make a living. And I really enjoyed reading your book, but I'm going to ask you straight up, what did you find out?
What I found out is that it's really hard and it's always been really hard. And it takes all your creativity, all your resourcefulness, all your tenacity, all your intelligence.
Mhm,
I mean, it's like the project of of being an artist is making the art, but it's also getting yourself to the place where you can make it. And that often
mhm.
means getting yourself into an economic place where you have, I mean, for some people, it means like some people I think have a tolerance for more risk and uncertainty than others, so maybe they can do
Yeah.
the more starving artist route, and other people maybe they need a more middle class comfortable existence in order to do their work. So I think it's really about kind of balancing your temperament and your ambition and whatever your particular financial circumstances are. It's like this juggling act that is part of being an artist. So for me, it's just fascinating to see how people did it and how they really
Mhm.
did it. I feel like often we don't really know, and I hope that readers just see that it is like a real dilemma, and maybe by reading how other
Yeah.
people confronted the dilemma and what solutions they came up with, you can sort of see some new ways for yourself.
For me, it was sort of reassuring. It's like, "Oh, right." Like,
It is
and I
hard.
I I feel like I was pretty far into my career before I realized, "Oh, like, all these people that I thought were just making a living at it actually, had a spouse or family, spouse with a big job and money and health insurance and all that, or they had family money or they had other means." And so, I realized too that it had created in myself unrealistic expectations about how do you make a living at this if the people I thought were making a living at it weren't their lifestyle was not a reflection of the money they were earning from their work. That was sort of a hard reality to
Yeah, yeah, it's always frustrating to realize, "Oh, wait, everyone I admire had inherited wealth."
Yeah.
Like, and if that's not an option for me, how am
Yeah,
I going
exactly.
to
Yeah.
be like that? But it's not everyone. I mean, this book is full of
Yeah.
stories of people who came from no money and found a way forward, and it wasn't always easy or pretty, and they didn't always do things that I could do, but
Mhm.
I find it entertaining in one, and I also find it an interesting window into who they were as artists, what their work was about.
Yeah,
And sometimes I feel like, oh, okay, maybe I should be a little bit more like that or a little bit more like this.
sure. I wanna talk about the ways that people went about this in a moment, but first I wanted to ask, what makes money such a touchy subject, like, particularly for artistic people, right? It just feels like, you can't go to a party with all your artistic friends and say, "Hey, everyone, how much money did you make this month?" Or, "How are you paying your mortgage?"
Wait, but do you
Yeah,
think it's different for creative people than it is for anybody?
Yeah.
You think I'm opening this up. Do you think it is
Mhm.
harder for creative people to talk about money than anyone else?
it might be. I think, if you're not making any money, are people going to think, oh, you're not a serious writer or artist? Like there's something about like you really have to claim the space for yourself. No one's going to say, oh, I mean, maybe, when you win a big award or something, but for a lot
Yeah.
of your career, it's like you're just sort of saying, okay, I'm a writer, like take me seriously. And I think if you're not making money at it, that can feel like it doesn't support this vision of yourself you're trying to put out in the world. And on the other hand, if you are living off money from your parents or something, it feels a bit like, I don't know if people are going to take me as seriously, or I don't know if I want people to know that I have this advantage. People can be very gossipy and
Yeah.
scathing about other people's money. So it's, I think, always a bit of a secret. Yeah.
So, one thing that I loved about your book is that you don't offer any advice. So, I just want to kind of thank you for that. It's a very
Yeah.
advice-free book, but there's lots of how to in it, which is to say these
Mhm.
are all the stories, look at all the ways it could be. But at at the end of the intro, you write something that I really loved. The work came first, you say, and when they put their work second, and by work we mean their creative work,
Mhm.
as they sometimes inevitably had to do, their souls suffered. And
Yeah.
so, what do you think is this relationship between an artist doing their artistic work and, well, their soul?
Well, I think a lot of us have this feeling we might be able to do this thing, and you start to grow it. It's this sort of hunch that there's something there. And as you start
Mhm.
to follow that hunch, it becomes like something it becomes something you really want or need to do. I think it varies how strong it is. Some people are absolutely like, I have to be an artist from
Mhm.
birth almost, and they follow that. Other people, like me, it's a little bit more um of a timid a thing. But I've had moments where plenty of times where felt like I wasn't able to do my writing work and I was losing touch to it, and it feels bad. And I think that's
Mhm.
really common. And I hope the message of the book is to just like try not to compromise in terms of what your instincts or your gut is telling you to do in that space, and maybe compromise something else, like maybe compromise and how you're making money, or find some other
Mhm.
space of your life where you can sacrifice in order to keep this flame alive. But it's really hard. And I think that's why I didn't offer any advice, because it's like
Yeah, there's this
there
secret,
isn't
right?
any. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just, I think what I hope people feel is that just recognized or validated. Like, this really is
Mhm.
tough, and people have gone through it and they've stuck with it, but it wasn't easy. So
I think one thing that I like about this is that it acknowledges, yes, that it is hard, and it also acknowledges that there is a choice and that you are going to have to make compromises somewhere,
Mhm.
just like you're saying. Uh, and what if you don't make it with your artistic work? I think about all the people who say to me, "Oh, you must have to write poems." 'Cause I have a daily writing practice. "Oh, you must have to write poems." And I'm always like, "No. Actually, not writing poems is so much easier than writing poems."
Yeah,
But
yeah,
but I suffer when I don't, and the suffering
yeah.
is it's not like, "Help me," and I'm gonna start wrinkling up or something. It's more like I just noticed that my quality of life is so much better when have this artistic, lens, when I have this
Mhm.
priority to show up in the world in a certain way. It's even less about the actual practice than about how I show up in the whole rest of my life.
Mhm.
Uh, I mean, it's both. But they sing together. They sing to each other.
yeah, that's a really great way of putting it. That priority of showing up in the world in a certain way. I like that.
Yeah.
Steal that maybe. I do think it's about like keeping alive this idea that you can do something with your experience, that the way you see the world
Mhm.
worth trying to convey. And it's also about, it's not just for you, it's about sharing it with other people, making this connection
Mhm.
that can
That's
be so powerful, and
Yeah.
going even if you only have a half hour a day or whatever.
Well, so much about creativity is really about noticing, right, and paying attention and being present in the world, and that's one thing that creative practice does, is it forces us to be, or allows us, maybe it's more thinking of it more as an opportunity to be fully present in the world, and to really show up and notice things, what's happening.
Yeah, and also it makes for me, it's like, oh, all this confusion and doubt in my mind and, ambivalence. It's like, this is all
Mhm.
material. I'm not just in confusion and doubt. I'm making sense of it for a project. And then it feels more manageable or more interesting.
Yeah.
So
Um,
you oh, go ahead, Christy.
go ahead. No, you go ahead,
Okay.
Chrissy.
So one thing else that I thought was interesting, well, so many things, but you said that often there's just one person or one event that keeps an artist on track to complete this artwork with lasting value. And you have lots of examples of that, but I'm curious in your own life, what has kept you on track?
Yeah, I've had a few really lucky moments. I mean, when I was in my early 20s, I was working at a library. I was pretending I was a writer, but I wasn't writing anything.
Mhm.
And I was thinking, gosh, how am I going to do this? And I was living in Nashville, and I'd always dreamed of moving to New York because I thought that's where writers go. I didn't have
Uh,
any idea how I would get there. And my mom has this close friend who was living in the New York area and was like, why don't you do this summer program that a friend of mine's daughter did in the publishing industry, and you can stay with me afterward while you get on your feet. And I thought, like, please, like, yes, absolutely. So that was how I sort of got myself to New York and into the general
Mhm.
vicinity of books and writing. And I went from trying to write on the side of a day job and not succeeding to finding a job where I was forced to write as part of my job. And that made such a huge difference for me. I wasn't really writing the kind of thing I wanted to write, but at
Mhm.
least was writing. I was learning how to write on deadline at different sizes and different styles. I was getting edited. And so that was like my big pivot, I think. And then later having a blog that unexpectedly became successful and led to a book deal was the other really big lucky break for me.
Wow, that's really interesting. Um, and it's funny, sometimes you look back and you can see these pivotal moments in retrospect, but at the time you don't really know how influential they'll be, right? That I think this goes back to a point you sort of made earlier about really being present for creativity and that you can't force it, but sort of creating the right environment and sort of being prepared to get lucky, right?
Yeah, yeah, I love that phrase. It's true. And also just staying in touch with the work or your hope for what the work might be in some way. I think if you don't always have to be working, but if you're somehow staying in touch with it,
Mhm.
you'll be ready to work on it when finally the circumstances line up. So I think I think that's always something to strive for.
Do you think
Mhm.
you have to move to New York to be a famous writer now? Is that
No,
still in
no,
your
I definitely
your
don't think so. No, I
mythology?
mean, I live in Los Angeles now, and there's a lot of great writers here, and I think particularly more and more, there's so many opportunities to publish and to take workshops and classes with writers and to connect with people online. And New York was expensive when I moved there, but now, of
Yeah.
course, it's so much more expensive. And I think at a certain point, the amount of effort it takes, this is the theme of the book, the amount of effort it takes to stay alive, if it doesn't leave you any time or energy to do this thing, then it's not gonna work. I mean, it defeats the purpose. So I don't think you have to move to New York. No.
Yeah. Okay,
Oh,
I
go ahead, Christy.
Oh, well, I think this is gonna be our last question because we're running low on time for this episode, but I'm really curious. So you have so many amazing anecdotes and stories in the book about how writers and artists make livings. I wonder if you had any favorite ones that sort of fell out?
Oh, that fell out. Yeah, there were
Yeah.
a bunch of favorite ones that
Uh,
fell out. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Um, I, I mean, something I've been thinking about that didn't make it in the book. There's this wonderful contemporary artist whose book is on my shelf. I'm blanking. David Hammonds. He's a wonderful artist. He has a permanent installation on the Hudson River near the Whitney Museum in New York. Anyway, I can't give his whole biography, but there's this interview he was doing in like the 70s, and someone asked him, "Do you think you have to starve to be an artist?"
uh,
And I thought, of course, he was going to say no, like, no, of course not. And his answer was, yeah, basically being an artist is a poverty game. And I thought, oh, I mean, it's so provocative. And
yeah,
of course,
yeah,
the irony is that he's now an extremely sought after artist who has, I think, a lot of wealth and
yeah.
has used it to, create infrastructure for other artists, which is great. But there was something about this story of like, if you don't care about money, maybe you end up getting it in the end. It's a tension that runs throughout the book, the way in which ignoring this thing maybe helps you get it. I never get tired of reading about that stuff.
It's sort of like creativity, right? It's like you can't force it, but you also need it, and you have to sort of show up for it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Or like you said earlier, you kind of have to like make your own luck, but
Yeah,
it's like, but how do you do that? For me, it's always an enjoyable thing to read and think about. So I feel really lucky to be in the position to do that.
for sure, for sure.
Well,
Well,
thank you, Mason.
yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the fun conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, it was great. And for those of you listeners who are paid subscribers to Emerging Forum, we will have, we're just going to continue this conversation. You can listen to that next week. You can become a paid subscriber by going to emergingforum.substack.com. If you like our show, visit us at emergingforum.substack.com, where you can find more, including show notes and back episodes.
There, you can also sign up for our bi-weekly newsletter or become a paid subscriber, which gets you bonus episodes every other week.
That's emergingforum.substack.com.
You've been listening to Emerging Forum. This is Rosemary Watola-Tromer, and my co-host is science writer Christy Ashwanden. Our fabulous audio producer is Cherie Turner, and our music is created and performed by Kira Kopostansky and edited by Leah Shaw. Kate LaRue designed our logo, and Jack Mueller, of course, inspired our work and the name of this podcast. As he always said, you must obey the poem's emerging form. Until next time.